So I get asked the question on how to recover the headliner material around the high rise, high contour sections around the sunglasses consoles, usually seen on the Audi models, the Volkswagen models. So in today's video, I'm going to run a demonstration on how we suggest to tackle this area. And the first tip is you've got to replace with brand new material, because you can see here the original factory headliner fabric is not going to reach anymore because it was placed under a lot of tension from the manufacturer. So if you were to try to stretch it back to where it's got to go, it's basically just going to put a lot of tension somewhere else and it's just going to bounce back off the board. You can see here in the middle, it's the same around that dome light as well. So I've seen people where they do quick methods where they just fire in a few staples, glue or drawing pins to try to hold the headliner board up for short-term solutions. But ideally you're going to need to replace with brand new material, because the foam on the back of the fabric does crumble away, turns to orange usually, and it basically just makes the headliner fabric fall away from the board. So adding glue to that dusty compound is just not going to work. It's not going to adhere to the board, and you can see how the fabric's gone very thin because there's no foam backing. As soon as the glue hits that fabric, you're basically risking that it's just going to leave a stain on the visible side. So you've got to replace with brand new material to fix the issue. So we've got our brand new fabric laid on the board. We're going to fold it over about 50% halfway. We've got that cylinder in the middle just to create that nice little even fold line. And the fabric that we're using today is the number 7 flat knit fabric. So all our material that we use daily is what we also do sell on our eBay page, along with one of the glues that I suggest, which is the T65 Tensor Grip. But you can also use the products like the Hi-Tac 76 3M or the Permatex headliner adhesive as well. I do suggest that on these boards, the T65, when you're spraying it, I actually use a combination of glues on this actual job itself, because the T65 is what we got on the shelf, and that's what we buy in bulk out of a 20-litre system. But then we do spray a bit of that Permatex or the 3M brand around the high-rise section, around the console. It just adds a bit more adherence. We find that these boards on the Audi models of Volkswagens can actually be quite oily for some reason, and the T65 does react on it around the corners. So we actually use a combination of the Permatex or the 3M just to make sure it has good adherence. So if you did purchase the T65, I also do suggest the Permatex or the 3M for this job, or you can just go straight out with the Permatex or 3M for the whole job itself. So that's just a tip for us, for you guys to know that when you're doing this process and following along, that's pretty much what we're going to do here. The steps that we're sharing today are going to possibly only work for our fabric that we do sell, because we can't guarantee the quality that you're going to buy if you're grabbing fabric from someone else or a different supplier, because our foam backing has the stitch on the back of the foam itself. So when it hits the board, you have multiple times that you can actually basically pull that back up and replace it, and you don't lose your foam. Where most fabrics that you do buy online just have a raw foam backing with no stitching to protect the layer where it hits the board. So as soon as you lay those products down on the board and you go to lift up, you're most likely going to lose your foam backing. Game over. You got to start again, scrub off the old foam that's basically stuck to the board. So it's a big game changer depending on what fabric you use. Also the stretch as well. Our fabric has got good quality stretch. So with all those important little things that you have to consider when doing these high-rise sections, that depending on what fabric you do use is going to change the way you approach and recover this board. So even with some of the suede products, they don't bend that well. Yeah, our fabric that we're using today is just that flat knit number 7 cappuccino light grey. It's got 4-way stretch. It's a great product to use. So we'll go ahead and show you now what we're doing. We're spraying glue. This is our Tensor Grip T65 delivery system from the 20 litres. So we buy this product in basically a 20-litre drum that's pressurized, and it acts like a massive aerosol canister. Very easy to use, very quiet to use, hardly no smell, very low toxicity possibly. That's why we're still using the all the safety gear, the glue mask, the overalls. We've got the air purifier running in the background as well, because we're just basically doing this every day, and we want to lower our risk of any absorption from any of the toxic materials from the glues that we do use. But yeah, that's what we're using today. So we're going to hit the board up with a T65 the whole way through. But before that, you can see that we did go around in any of the corners, the high-rise sections, anywhere the fabric has to bend or feed around. We used a bit of the Permatex product or the 3M just in those areas, and then we wiped it if it didn't hit the board properly, because if it hit the board in more of a couple of droplets, we smoothed it over with that off-cut of that fabric. So that's what you've seen us do before. We're spraying a few coats of fabric on the glue of the fabric now as well at the far back, just doing a couple of overlaps left and right. Overlapping about 50% each time, getting good coverage there. We've done that a couple of times. So basically I've gone up and down, left to right vertically, and then probably up and down, left to right horizontally, just to get good coverage. We did that on the back of the fabric and the board. Now we're going to bring the two together. I know the dry times of this glue, so this is filmed in real time, and I know it's ready to stick down straight away. So depending on the temperature you're applying the job at, if you've got like a really cold morning, you're probably going to have to wait for that glue to become tacky. But most of the time, the best temperature to apply these jobs at would be around about that, probably about 18 to 23 degrees is going to be quite ideal. 35 degrees onwards is going to be very difficult. As soon as the fabric sticks to the board, it's going to be very hard to shift it again. So you kind of running the risk that it might be a one shot. You got to get it in one shot. And then in cold mornings, you might have to add a bit more glue because it never went to a tacky stage, but maybe it also never dried as well. So it's like a bit of a thing to deal with when it's too cold. But you can see here, what we're going to actually do is we're going to try to feed as much fabric to all the contours, all the edges, all the deep recesses. I'm going to try to feed it in there. That way it's not placed under a lot of stress and a lot of tension. So the more fabric we can feed and bulk up into those areas, the better it's going to last. If you're buying the fabric through us on eBay, we usually include just a little off-cut foam pad. Basically, it's just an off-cut of headlining material. And we use that just to push down on the fabric. That way we're not using our fingertips and it might slightly dent the fabric. And we're going to start at the front section of this center console. We're going to push it up. I wouldn't be too concerned about any imperfections just yet, because there are methods to remove any dents or creases on the fabric, like a steamer that I'll show you guys right at the end. But yeah, you push down on the front of this fabric, get it all pushed up to the front, nice and even. You want to make sure that the headliner material is all clean. That's why we use the air blower as well, just to make sure we're not pushing any like fibers or dirt into the fabric. It's going to be harder to clean later on. And then once we've got that pushed up to the front, we're going to work on the sides, and I'll show you exactly on how to do that step. So the next step is we're just lifting the fabric up just to line the fabric so it's running very even, so we haven't got too much of one fabric heading to the left side or the right side. You want it quite even. And then from there we're going to place some cuts in this headliner material in the part where you're going to cut out anyway to fit the sunglasses console. And what that's going to allow us to do is feed the fabric from the parts that we do cut out in the middle over to the sides. It's going to actually allow way more slack in the fabric, and it's going to allow so much slack and room for the fabric to just feed into either side, and basically those corners won't be under stress, it won't be under tension, and it shouldn't pop back out again. So what I did here is I did a quick drawing just to demonstrate further exactly what we're doing here. So with those cuts that we've made around that sunglasses console, allows more fabric, more slack to be fed deep into those high-rise contours around the sunglasses console, around the left and right side. So the red lines illustrate the movement of fabric, basically allowing that fabric to be fed around the edges to basically create less of that stress and tension on the fabric, and hopefully it will hold into those areas very tightly for a long term. Okay, so the next step, we're going to push this fabric around the corner and feed it in section by section as we go. I'm just using my hand on this process so I can get a better feel. So we'll go back to that foam pad later on. But I'm going to bridge it across the top. Once I've got it positioned well, that I know I've actually opened up that gap where I've cut, fed a lot of fabric off to that left side. And then I'm just going to slowly tackle this, just like section by section, just feeding it down. I know where the fabric's got to go, and what I want to try to do is just create a lot of slack, a lot of material going into that area, basically the less tension, the less stress you put on the fabric, the better. And if you do pull this material, say you stretch it into one section, you're going to see that stretch line on the fabric. So you want to try to not stretch the fabric to where it's got to go. You just want to try to feed it to where it's got to go, almost let it drop down like water and just run into that section. And any imperfections that we are creating here, this is why it's really ideal to use a handheld steamer. So we got the Philips handheld steamer that we use right at the end of this video, and it's going to show you that we can get most imperfections just all completely tidied up, and it's going to look 100% ready for handover. So now we're just blending that fabric away, because you got to remember that we used a lot of slack in there, a lot of loose material to try to get it in there without no tension, no stress. And what happens there, you got a lot of fabric now to kind of blend out as well. So you just blend it all out, move it off to the sides, and that's perfect. It's looking quite ideal. So moving on to the right side now, and we'll just finish off this one. Same process. Try to feed as much fabric as we can into those corners without stretching the fabric. Just allow it kind of just all bulk up and really just fall into place. And you just go, see, I got my hand underneath the actual fabric itself because I'm preventing it from sticking anywhere else. And you can see how much slack I'm using as well. Like, there's a lot of slack of fabric there. So what I'm trying to do is basically feed as much into that corner as possible, open up that gap where I've cut. And when I feed it all in there, it's going to create a lot of slack of material that I've got to work out somewhere else. So you just got to basically pull it away to make it all look tight and finish right at the end. But for now, I'm just focusing on how much material I can get into this section. But you can pull this fabric out later on by going like really far left and right. I'll show you in a minute what I do. So you can see it looks like I've got way too much fabric in the middle here, but that's no issue. I'm going to tidy all that up in a minute. So just want to make sure that I've got this perfectly fed into that place. And then from here, you can get away with stretching the fabric around the front sections because you're just not going to see any of the stress marks that you put in the fabric. This is actually an important section you can actually tidy up just by applying a lot of stretch to the fabric right at the edges. So this is at the front of the board. Pull all the way left, so say if I'm tackling in the middle where there's a lot of creases and slack, if you just tackle that section where there's a crease, it's going to be very hard. So if you work really far away from it, so I was tackling the creases in the middle from all the way to the other side of the board there, just to blend them out. Sunglasses console is going to fit in there. It's going to take up all the imperfections in the middle, so I wouldn't stress about all that stuff. And just tidy it up. That looks perfect to me. We know we've got the steamer to still go on this job. We don't have to use a steamer on all these jobs as well. You can basically get away with the job looking perfect at the end, because we've got this job sitting under a lot of lights at the moment, so you're going to see a lot of different shadows and stuff like that. But once the job's done and it's allowed to settle, the foam expands, everything just kind of just settles, and then it gets installed in the job inside the car, inside the cabin, where there's less lighting hidden the job, and different shadows are playing their roles. Sometimes you're not even going to see what you see on the bench. So if you see any imperfections on the bench, once it's installed in the job, you're not even going to see it at all. We're just using a little upholstery skewer now just to poke at the fabric, just to pull out some little imperfections that we might be seeing here that's not ideal. So like little dents and stuff like that. You can play around and shift at the foam by poking a needle through. We explain all those steps and process on our ebook that we have on our webpage called Headlining Secrets. It's always updated, and it just shows you all the solutions of how to do a car headlining repair, all the resources, all in one place. And you basically, it's a lot of extra detail that you guys can really absorb if you're doing your own project at home. You can just download that ebook off our webpage. About 25 pages of pictures, text and videos, and it'll just explain the process perfectly. And you can see how the steamer just works great, like that line, that crease line, that's very common that you get out the front section, because the fabric has to make almost like a 90-degree bend, and most of the fabric that you buy these days doesn't like the bend, and it gets a crease line in there. The steamer will just basically remove that straight away, sometimes on most jobs. And you can see here we just buzz it a bit. It's very hard to get into that little tight area, but the steam does the job. And I did do a video explaining about the steam does it affect the glue or the fabric, does it burn it? And you just got to try it out on little small sections of your board first, because I'm not sure what fabric you're using. If you're buying our fabric, it doesn't seem to affect it that much. So basically I held it on one spot for a long time and nothing really happened. So, and the glue still stuck to the board. I did that little demonstration on one of our other videos on this channel. So it seems to be that there's no repercussions from using the steamer. The little watermarks that hit the board, that's just dripping a bit of water that will dry and you won't see it. But if you do, you can always hit it up with a bit of carpet and a foaming upholstery cleaner just to blend it in. It should be all sweet. To make sure the job really lasts, you want to be pushing down on the job completely around the whole lot, just with a foam pad like I'm doing right now, just to make sure it's got good adherence to the board and make sure the glue's doing its job. So that's always a good tip to do when you're finishing off these jobs. Just go around the whole job, push it down, tidy it up. We're going to overlap the material around the edges as well. And if we need to, we can bring out the steamer again, hit up a few sections if we need to, just to tidy it up. Otherwise, it's good to go straight in the car. It's going to look sweet. So if you found this content helpful, guys, just make sure you give the video a thumbs up, click like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next video.